Our story starts with a boy who's busy daydreaming on a bus ride, but the calm mood is abruptly ended when a train smacks into the bus, immediately killing all the passengers. I guess Truck Kun took the day off. The boy wakes up as a child and he's having a major identity crisis. He remembers his life as Haruto in Japan, but he also remembers his life here as a boy named Ryo. His thoughts are interrupted when a bunch of guys barge in with a sack and another bag full of food. They talk about how they just made some easy money with this transport job, and you can tell that's some cartel shit in the bag. The guys send Ryo away so they can eat, so he goes outside to wash himself. There he recalls how he ended up here after his mother was murdered in front of him, but his flashback is interrupted by this group of women. They ask him if he's seen a purple-haired girl anywhere, but he hasn't. One of the women, Celia, uses a magic search, and it turns out that Ryo has magic energy. She leaves to continue their search and gives Ryo a pouch of silver for his help. Ryo returns to the house, he gets jumped by the cartel and realizes that everyone else has been packed up. He's about to be killed as well, but luckily for him, this pink-haired girl shows up to give him the tutorial. After the tutorial, he is now a martial arts master and hits the assailant with the sickest arm bar you'll ever see. He then kills the guy and finds that the cartel sack had the purple-haired girl in it. He's trying to get her to safety when the women from before spot him, and this brat starts getting all up in his face like he didn't just save her. The night, there's more calm about it, but she also doesn't fully trust him, so she tells him to follow her to the castle so they can investigate properly. However, this Muppet, Charles, must not have heard the properly part, and he's just beating the hell out of Ryo. After the princess wakes up, they now realize that Ryo is innocent. Now that he's been proven innocent, Charles realizes that he's screwed up and leaves immediately, and Ryo wakes up later in a bed after Celia healed him. As a reward and apology, Ryo is requested for an audience with the king. Ryo is allowed to attend the academy thanks to him saving the princess, but the bullying is going to be worse than British private school. Since Ryo can't read, he goes to Celia for extra tutoring sessions. Celia is only 12 years old, yet she skipped a bunch of grades and has already graduated high school, so she's quite the intellectual. She begins teaching Ryo how to write, but she is shocked when Ryo is able to do simple multiplication. However, Ryo was a university student in his past life, meaning he has already witnessed the horrors of integral calculus, so multiplication isn't much of a challenge. The class is having a training period when the instructor takes an interest in Ryo and tells him to spar for a little. Ryo also practiced the sword in his past life, so he is able to impress the instructor, but the other students are upset by this. The only thing worse than having a loser in your class is having a loser that is actually better than you. The exams roll around and this one guy is sweating, but Ryo is just taking the test like it's nothing, and he ends up getting the best score in the class alongside the princess. Blondie over here can't accept that Ryo was first despite Celia's confirmation. If the word of the one who gave the exam is not enough to convince him, I don't know what will. Ryo is happy that he did so well, but now the bullying is going to go up a notch, maybe even Catholic school level. Though he thinks he'll be able to manage it since he has Celia for support. Celia agrees and says he can come to her anytime he has a problem, and she'll hold him to her chest to help. But Ryo is like, what chest? Some time has passed, and the students for the night competition are being selected, and Blondie still can't accept that he's worse than Ryo. Ryo spends most of his time with Celia, who puberty hasn't been generous to, while Ryo is over here with his 6-foot energy. Celia asks Ryo what he intends to do after he's graduated, and he says he intends to leave the country. He's going to go to the Yabuma region, which is where his parents are from. The day of the night competition arrives, and by chance Ryo's opponent is Charles. Charles got demoted because of his actions that day, and he plans to take out his frustrations on Ryo. But Ryo is no pushover, and Charles loses to him while he is only a student. Charles is about to blow a head gasket, but he is forced to leave, and Ryo is declared the winner. Later, Charles is drinking his problems away while this guy keeps sweet-talking him. And let's see, he's got blue hair, red eyes, and he looks like a vampire. This guy is definitely evil. Later, Celia is looking for Ryo, and she finds him while he's in the middle of receiving a confession letter. A while later, the students are having a magic class, and Blondie is absolutely beaming that he finally has one-up on Ryo since he can't use magic. Celia then asks him to demonstrate his magic capabilities if he is so well adept with it. The two perform a lighting spell, but is nothing special, and Celia tells them as much. She then proceeds to show them just how much there is left to learn, and they are all amazed. All except for Ryo, who, while he can't use regular magic, can still recreate spells of similar nature. After the class, Stuart tries to get close to Celia, but his advances are shot down. Since he has no game, he gets angry at Ryo, who has been getting confessions left and right since his victory in the tournament, but he isn't falling for the bait and just goes along with his rant. Later, the class is having a practical exam which will determine their final grade for the year. Blondie apparently bribed his way into some information about the course and the quickest way to get to the finish, And as expected, they give Rio the worst possible job. The group seems to be doing fine at first, and Mr. Suspicious over here is just watching them, but when they think they've reached the goal, they find themselves at the edge of a cliff. Blondie now realizes that his map was a scam. See, this is why you don't buy maps in a dark alleyway. They start panicking about what to do, but then things get worse and they are attacked by a group of orcs. Then Stuart gets struck in the leg, and in true Wuss fashion, he starts wailing to everyone that it hurts. He ends up bumping into the princess and she was flying off the cliff. Rio jumps out to save her and pushes her back to safety while he falls to the forest below. The group manages to barely defeat the orcs, and Stuart starts trying to blame Rio for the princess's fall. But now isn't the time to look for a culprit. They try to leave the forest, but they are once again attacked, and this time by a minotaur. To put it simply, their goose is cooked. Their magic is ineffective and their fighters have been whooped. Princess Flora is trying to revive one of her classmates when she's about to get put in a body bag. But Rio comes back just in time to save her. Even Rio doesn't know why he came back to save her, but he's here now, so he might as well defeat the monster. He's struggling a bit, but he does indeed defeat the monster, and then just walks into the forest. Later, Celia overhears that the royal family intends to blame Rio for everything that happened, even though they know that he had nothing to do with it. Rio later comes to visit Celia in her room, and he tells her that he's going to be leaving the kingdom since he's about to be framed. She doesn't want him to go, but she agrees that he'll be in danger if he stays. Rio has fled the royal capital to the next town over since his mugshot makes it difficult to buy things in the capital. He's in Amanda, a town with plentiful food reserves, and he even finds a stand that's selling noodles. He wonders if there was anyone else from Japan, but he can't find an answer, so he stops thinking about it. He asks if he can buy noodles in bulk, but the vendor tells him that he can't get that here. He instead directs him towards the Merchant Guild, where he will find all the stock he's gonna need. He gets to the guild and is greeted by the blue-haired Loda, who asks him to take off his weapons due to company policy. She will be assisting him with his purchases, so they go around the guild and shop. Later, Loda has collected everything that Rio had asked for, but it is quite heavy and she is concerned that he won't be able to carry it. And not to worry, Rio is jacked. Rio continues on his journey, but he notices a child in the middle of the road. He tries to help, but he gets a poison needle shot at him in the process. He's now been poisoned, but he isn't going to let that stop him. The girl states that she's going to kill him, and as they battle, Rio notices that she is a beast person and way faster than anyone he's ever met before. But the beast girl is also surprised by his speed. Rio has now judged the girl's ability, and he proceeds to lay on the disrespect. He sheaths his sword and straight bodies this girl and then pins her to the ground. Now that she's been beaten, she starts to cry for her mother since she thinks he's about to kill her, leaving Rio with no choice but to knock her out for now. After she is out, Rio notices that she is wearing a slave collar, so he removes it. The girl's name is Latifa, and Train Kun went for the double kill since he got her too. She woke up in this world as a slave, and even worse, her master was the Wuss. She finally wakes up, and Rio tells her if she tries anything violent, then he'll kill her. She agrees to stay quiet, and Rio shows her that he took off her collar. She's finally free to do whatever she wants, but realistically, if she stays here, she's going to end up as a slave again. So he tells her to go into the forest to go find some other beast people. He then leaves, but Latifa keeps following him, and she ends up asking to follow him. But I mean, you just try to kill the guy, so it's understandable that Rio doesn't trust her. She's desperate, so she offers to have Rio put the slave collar on her, but he doesn't want to become a slave owner, so he just agrees to let her join him. The two then travel to the beast people, and as they get close, they set up camp, and Rio uses magic to help Latifa sleep peacefully. However, trouble's afoot. Rio is being ambushed by the beast people, and they use a light to blind him. Rio is trying to be reasonable and talk this whole situation out, but the winged girl doesn't seem interested in listening. They are going to at least hear him out at first, but after they find Latifa in his tent, they go back to their original plan and jump him again. While knocked out, Rio once again sees the tutorial, but he can't get any new information from her since even she doesn't know who she is. All she knows is that she is connected to Rio in some way. Rio wakes up to Latifa hugging him, and she's enraged that the beast people treated him so badly, and the jumping squad walks into the room with their tails between their legs. One of the elders comes in and apologizes to Rio for their misunderstanding, and she promises that they'll be punished for their behavior. She leaves them be for now, and in the morning, she calls Rio to a meeting of the Council of Elders. The elders apologize once more for the trouble that they caused him, even though he was just trying to help Latifa. They say he can stay in the village as long as he wants, and anything he needs will be provided for him. After the elders finish talking, Dryas, a spirit of the world tree, appears. She greets Rio and tells him that she feels a spirit within him, but when she asks him about it, he has no clue what she is talking about. After some digging, She finds that the spirit in him is likely one of the 6 great spirits that disappeared ages ago. And while Rio doesn't understand the significance, that would essentially make him the Pope of the village, Rio returns to the house which he'll be staying in with Latifa, and he finds that they have rice here too. Though they say it originated from the Yabumo region, Rio goes on his village training arc and spends a while in the village. Meanwhile, Mr. Suspicious is still up to his nefarious plots. He steals a dragon egg, and let's just say, the dragon is not too happy about it. The village is having their festival, and Rio and Latifa are their honored guests, but as the festivities proceed, Rio has got quite the harem around him, and they seem to be a little drunk too. One of the girls tells the others to lay off him a little, but she also asks Rio why he keeps his distance from them. Rio lives by the policy be gone thought, but he doesn't say that to them, and instead says he'll try to be more friendly to them. To celebrate, the girl that is already drunk insists on drinking some more, and they're having a grand old time. Seeing this, Rio thinks it might be time to leave Latifa in the village since she would be well taken care of, and if she gets too attached to him, she'll start having daddy issues when he leaves. Meanwhile, Count Suspicious is acting very supportive of the training knight that is with him and gives him a red pill to swallow. Count Suspicious is using him as bait to lure the dragons away from their nest in order to steal the remaining eggs. Meanwhile, Rio tells Latifa that he's going to be leaving the village without her soon, and the daddy issues are already kicking in, so she runs off. The tree spirit notices the disturbance in the forest and sends out an investigating party. This time, they want to try and avoid combat as much as possible and talk first, but the knight is following orders from Count Suspicious, so he immediately tries to flee towards the village. However, he's also got a horde of wyverns on his tail, and they're not interested in talking. The beast people try to stop him from heading into the village while being tailed by the wyverns, but Count Suspicious activates the red pill that the dude swallowed, and it turns his insides into pudding. The egg falls to the ground, and unluckily, Latifa is walking exactly where the egg falls, and now she's aggroed the wyverns. The beast warriors are there to prevent her from getting bodied, but they too are getting curb stomped by the wyverns. After seeing that the wyvern is heading towards the village, Latifa uses herself as bait to draw it away. But when she gets cornered by a log falling in front of her, rather than jumping back or to the side, she stands there to get stomped by the monster. Luckily, Rio is there to save her, and he then uppercuts the wyvern. One of the girls is amazed to see someone boxing with a wyvern, but if it works, it works. He defeats the wyvern, and the remaining ones retreat after their leader just got destroyed. Later, the time for Rio to leave has arrived, and Latifa has finally come to terms with him leaving. But before he leaves the village, they load him up with tons of gear to help him on his journey. After what must have been months of travel, Rio finally makes it to the Yabumo region and asks to meet with the village head. A girl, Ruri, working in the rice fields, says her grandma is the village head, and she offers to take him there. Once they reach the village head's house, Yuba comes out to greet Rio. She asks him what his business is in the Yabumo region, and Rio explains that his parents were originally from this region. Once Rio mentions his parents' names, Yuba tells the other girls to leave them be, since this story is a bit personal. She reveals that she knows his parents and that Rio is her grandchild. Rio asks if he can make graves for his parents in the village since he never got the chance to do so previously, but Yuba tells him that there are already graves for them. As they visit his parents' graves, Yuba promises to keep his lineage hidden from the other villagers for the time being. The next morning, Rio wakes up and is about to head out to help with the village work. But then Ruri comes out nearly naked and flashes Rio. What a great first impression for your cousin. Rio is tasked with preparing breakfast for everyone, including Seo and her elder brother, Shin, who will be arriving soon. As the other two arrive, Shin asks who the hell Rio is supposed to be, and Yuba introduces them. Shin seems a little abrasive towards Rio at first, but after he's done eating, his impression of Rio has improved. Yuba asks Shin to take Rio to Dola to help with the hunting, and while Shin now likes Rio, he doesn't think he'll be able to handle it since he looks rather delicate. Yuba tells him not to worry about it, and Rio goes hunting with the group. But as expected, Rio solo carries the squad, and while he never said it, Shin definitely felt like a noob here. Rio returns from the hunt and he wants to take a bath, so he just pops one out of thin air. After his bath, Seo and Ruri show up and are amazed by this strange scent on Rio. Soap. Shin is starting to get jealous of Rio. First he shows him up in the hunt, and now he's rizzing up the girls with his fancy soap. He's jealous, but still nowhere near the blondie and will wuss. Later on, Shin gets into a fight with some people from the neighboring village, and it was well-deserved since this scumbag came into the village and is already doing scummy things. But still, the dude's got diplomatic immunity since he's the son of the neighboring village head, so no matter how much Shin wants to punch him, he can't. Gon keeps talking a lot of shit, so Shin finally decides to punch him, but he gets manhandled and choked out. Yuba shows up to break up the fight, and since he is still an important person, she is obligated to give him a guest hut to stay in. But he gets the one at the very edge of the village. As Gon leaves, he spots Rio and tries to knock him down for no reason, but Rio has got the calves of steel and Gon falls to the ground. Seeing the threat of Gon, Yuba asks to protect Sayo for the night, and Rio gives them a red pill to protect them, but not the kind that turns your insides to jelly. The next night, the red pill comes in handy as Gon is trying to do something very illegal, and Rio is having none of that. He proceeds to flip the dude and lay into him with the pounding of a lifetime. Even his mother isn't gonna be able to recognize him after that one. Since Gon managed to survive Rio's beating, he is to be taken to the capital to answer for his crimes, and Rio is tagging along with Shin. Shin has actually warmed up to him quite a bit, seeing as he just saved his sister and all. Later, Rio is out with Sayo, and he buys her an accessory as thanks for all that she has helped him with. Immediately after, a girl is being kidnapped in the crowd while her guard is being kept busy. The guard calls out for someone to help her, but no one is willing to risk their lives. However, Rio steps up and defeats the attacker, and the whole crowd starts clapping as if they couldn't have helped at least a little. Rio leaves before he can get into any more trouble, but upon returning home, he finds someone there to discuss something with him. The man is called Goki, and he tells Rio that his family was royalty. His father was a noble warrior assigned to protect the princess during a war, but as peace negotiations were settled, the prince of the other country tried to kidnap the princess because why the hell not? And while Rio's father was able to stop him, diplomatic immunity strikes again, and the prince ordered for Rio's dad to be executed and his mother to be married to him. Well, the king wasn't going to let that happen, so he instructed them to flee the kingdom and live together. Now Goki would like Rio to go and see the king. Rio meets with his grandparents and tells them the story of his life up until this point and about the man who killed his mother. Rio can forgive many things, but that man must die by his hands. Later, Yuba informs Ruri of Rio's royal lineage, and she doesn't believe it at first, but upon realizing that they aren't messing with her, she suddenly gets all formal with Rio. He isn't really into the whole royal thing, especially after seeing the royals where he grew up, so he asks her to just treat him like normal. He also tells them that he'll be leaving the village in a year to go back. Later on, the other girls in the village are a little jealous that Ruri is on a first-name basis with Rio, and consequently, Sayo starts to get a little self-conscious about how close Rio and Ruri are. Rio ends up telling Sayo that he'll be leaving the village later that year, and she's emotionally destroyed, but neither she nor her brother can say anything to make Rio stay. So in order to cope, she becomes a gym bro and starts training. After that, Rio spends a few more months living in the village, and this time before he departs to continue his journey, he gets approached by a fair maiden that confesses her love for him, and sadly, it doesn't matter how much I wanted him to say welcome to the harem, the result would end the same, him saying, sorry, I can't retain your feelings. Although it crushed her heart and mind, a little chat with the Giva Chad man lifted her spirit and encouraged her to say one last goodbye, Naruto style, just like when Sasuke left useless Sakura behind in the Leaf Village. But enough of pleasant memories, back to the story. Rio leaves the village and heads towards the Beastkin Forest. There, he meets with the elders and informs them of everything that he learnt in the Yamhuma village. He's going to be staying here for a few months before he continues on to the kingdom. The next morning, Rio wakes up to find that he's not alone in bed. The tutorial lady is back. The rest of the girls rush in to find out what's going on, and once they see that Rio must have had an active night, Latifa keeps asking who the girl is and why it couldn't have been her. The tutorial finally speaks up and says she is a spirit that has a contract with Rio. Rio names her Aishia and goes to the elders to inform them of the situation. While they are talking, Dryas appears and introduces herself to Aishia. Dryas asks what kind of magic Aishia can use, and she says all of them. So to put that to the test, she organizes a sparring match between Aishia and Rio to ascertain her power level. The match begins, and despite only being 4 hours old, she's already equal to Rio in terms of strength and magic. They get into a standoff and start forming massive tornadoes in the air, but Dryas brings the battle to a close before they can summon a natural disaster. As a parting gift, Rio is given a house which he can carry in his storage and an earring which can change his hair color, since he is still a wanted man. Rio travels back to the kingdom, but upon returning, he finds out the terrible news. Celia is getting married to Charles. Rio knows something must be seriously wrong for Celia to be marrying the equivalent of the rich bully, so he decides to go and investigate it himself. Meanwhile, Celia is having dinner with her father and Charles. She's anything but happy with the situation, but it is what it is, and what it is her life is over. Later that night, Rio asks Aishia to scope out the royal palace so he can find Celia, and they eventually track her down to her room. She was reminiscing about Rio when he sneaks into the room and meets her. She can't believe it, he's actually back in the flesh. She starts making some tea for them to catch up, But then Rio asks her if she actually wants to get married to Charles. She doesn't want to get Rio involved, so she tells him to leave before he gets caught. The next day at the wedding, Celia gets dressed, and Charles introduces her to his, am I seeing this right, 6 wives. They're all jealous that she's prettier than them, so they start messing with her. Later, the wedding begins and Celia is being paraded through the capital. However, Rio was in the crowd and he gave it some thought. He can't stop the wedding from a political standpoint, so he's gonna do the next best thing. Kidnap her. Rio is making a mad dash for Celia and is a one-man army while doing so. He's casually ripping through the defenses and dodging bullets like it's his Tuesday morning routine. Charles tells Celia that it's only a matter of time before the guy gets captured. After all, he's up against the kingdom's elite soldiers. And as he says this, those very same soldiers are being bodied by a teenager. Rio breaks through, and just for good measure, he punches Charles in the gut. Now he has to sell this part as a kidnapper, so he holds a knife to Celia's throat and crushes Charles under his foot. Rio declares that because he has a grievance with Charles, he's going to abduct Celia from him and humiliate him by stealing his girl in front of everyone. Rio then gets up and runs off with Celia, and the guards aren't able to do anything about it. Charles is losing his shit and orders the night captain to go after the kidnapper. Rio still has to shake off his pursuers, so he hands Celia over to Aishia and goes back to face off with them. The Griffin squad spots him and begins firing, and real estate values here are gonna plummet after this much property damage. Rio lands on the ground and starts breaking some necks, which I guess is better than killing them. The Night Captain then challenges Rio and tells the other knights to stay back unless they want to end up paralyzed. Rio faces off against him, and this is the first difficult fight he has had here. And it is only made worse by the fact that he doesn't intend to kill anyone. The Night Captain's sword has some kind of enchantment on it, and when Rio lets up for a moment, he takes the chance to activate his Excalibur. It seems that Rio has been reduced to ashes, but in reality he manages to escape and meets up with Celia on a mountaintop. He promises that from now on, he'll take care of her and make sure she's happy. But the reunion is cut short when mysterious lights erupt from the various mountaintops. Aishia seems to know what it means and asks Rio for his help. Later, some Japanese kids appear, and they are being kidnapped as soon as they appear. Because why the hell not? Rio shows up, and upon finding out that this group are the kidnappers, he cuts them down. However, the big surprise turned out to be Isa's childhood friend / crush is one of the isekai kids. The end.